Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another thrilling episode of Atheist Church Audit. My name is Jared. I'm an atheist. You probably know that by now. And this week, I had the thrilling pleasure of meeting the religious leader that many call Sweet Daddy. About a year ago, I stumbled my way into a fascinating church called the United House of Prayer for All People. I went, and then I went again. And I have been fascinated and obsessed with the United House of Prayer for All People since my initial visit. And now I am so thrilled to say that this has all accumulated, all come to a head in actually getting to meet the man who is known as Sweet Daddy, the leader of the United House of Prayer for All People. I've made 3 videos on the UHOP so far. The first video, I was very taken aback and shocked and kind of flabbergasted this whole thing, and I blasted them pretty heavily.
Why? Why would you single people out like that and make them feel like shit for not being able to give more money to your church? What the fuck?
My second video, I went to a different congregation. There are over 100 UHOP churches in America, and I had a wildly different experience, and it shaped and shifted my judgment of this organization. And then in my third video, I offered some candid questions to members of the United House of Prayer for All People. And one of my questions in that video was, hey, I'm an outsider. I've been really critical of y'all in the past. Am I welcome back? And with that caveat, I said, I want to sincerely understand more, and there is even the real possibility that I could be wrong about this whole thing. Am I allowed back? And in asking both current members and former members, they all told me yes. Yeah, so I don't know, man. I just really wanted and needed to see all of this in person. And I reached out to members and former members, and the only advice I was given was consider not clapping when the music is playing, because you'll probably clap on the wrong beat because you're white. Now, I want to say this from the get-go. This video is a little strange because it's kind of for everyone and for no one. This is directed towards my general audience who, follow me around different churches as I give my general musings on what churches I find interesting and unique and weird and quirky. But then also, this is specifically devoted to the members of the United House of Prayer for All People. And the reason why I'm saying that at all is because when I talk about other religious communities, it's different. For example, I make a lot of content on the Jehovah's Witnesses because I am fascinated and horrified by the Jehovah's Witnesses. The reason why my tone here is different is because the Jehovah's Witnesses are told expressly to not watch videos about Jehovah's Witnesses. And so I can kind of just fly off the cuff, be pretty candid and casual, and I don't have to worry about what actual Jehovah's Witnesses are going to think because they're probably not going to hear it. In addition to that, there are dozens of ex-Jehovah's Witness channels who make content reflecting on their time in the Jehovah's Witnesses, and so I'm kind of a drop in a larger bucket. With the United House of Prayer for All People, nobody's talking about them. Whereas the Jehovah's Witnesses have millions of members, the United House of Prayer for All People probably has somewhere in the ballpark between 20 and 50,000 members. And when I made my first video, I wasn't really reflecting on those people in this church seeing my video. I was more so just gonna blab about it to whoever the hell cared. Keep in mind that when I made that video, my channel was much, much smaller. But now, I have a vested interest in this whole thing because I've met ex-members and current members and pastors and apostles, and I am fascinated by this whole world, and I feel like I actually am seeing the humans behind it. And that's a really exciting feeling. And so before I address the members of the United House of Prayer for All People, I kind of want to address my general audience, specifically my Christian audience. This will sound like really hypocritical given the first video that I made, but I want to kind of temper the expectations and the understanding of this group. I was really taken aback by this group, and I was really hard on them. However, in studying them further and trying to better understand them, there's nothing stupid about this whole thing. I think one of the things that irks me most about a lot of Christians, period, is sort of the smug sense in which people just assume that they're right. And truth be told, this is a problem among all communities, but I want to call it out here. There's kind of just the general assumption that oh man, they call this man daddy. There's a lot of money involved. Clearly it's bullshit. And not to get too existential, but there's part of that that really irks me. Now listen, I'm over here being the pot that called the kettle black because I made a very, targeted video on them the first time. It was very sensational. And still, as I made that video and as I continued to explore them, I always want to hold in my mind the reality that, who knows, maybe God is using Sweet Daddy Cunningham. Now listen, I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of concerns for the U-Hop. However, what irks me about Christians is that they have kind of this moral high ground that they take with situations like this, and it seems wrong. Oh, he's just some cult leader, and clearly we know that God is not operating through a man named Sweet Daddy. Clearly God didn't reveal his scriptures to some guy in the Americas named Joseph Smith. Clearly God wouldn't bring a Messiah out of a place as lowly as Nazareth. On the surface it sounds silly, therefore it's probably not of God. But isn't the foolishness of God wiser than the wisdom of men? I don't know, it seems like if you want to be a Christian, it seems like you should take seriously all of these apparently silly things because maybe God is in them. And maybe the only people who will recognize it as sincerely from God are the people who are humble enough to look at it and say, yeah, it looks strange, but maybe God's in it anyway. It's just kind of a pre-canned rant I wanted to go on, but that's neither here nor there. All right. Disclaimer, caveats, blah, 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 blah. So let me talk about my time at the United House of Prayer for All People. This is my third visit to a U-Hop congregation. I've been to one in Charlotte, I've been to one in my hometown, and now I've been to one in Greensboro. Now, ladies and gentlemen of all stripes and colors, let's cut through the BS here. This was a little bit sketchy for me to go to. Right? I mean, whether you're a U-Hop member or not, let's just address it. I was rude and I was foul in my first video. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I know that a lot of U-Hop members have seen that video. It got passed around in that community. I also know that I kind of stick out like a sore thumb there for some reason. Everyone that I met there was so kind and so gracious and so warm. And, I got 3 or 4 hellos from different people, and that meant a lot to me. But even still, I knew that there were some people who were not thrilled at me being there. Now, nobody gave me any trouble. Nobody gave me any gruff. But I couldn't shake the feeling that, man, it only takes one person, one person out of a sea of 500 people. It's totally possible that somebody could see me and be like, you're the guy who made that video. Again, not indicative of the entire church in the slightest, but I'm annoying. Let's call it what it is. And so it was a very real concern of mine that I might walk out of the House of Prayer with a couple fewer teeth. But it was worth it to me because I really wanted to see this in person, and I really want to understand this community better. And so I went. And when I went, I was thrilled and fortunate enough to run into Elder Young, who was one of the pastors that I met at a previous House of Prayer. And man, y'all are so lucky to have a man like him in your ranks. He was warm, he was hospitable, he was gracious. He ushered me into a visitor seating section, and we sat and we talked, and he commended me on a good video. He thought that my questions were thought-provoking and valid. And I remember sitting there next to him, waiting for the bishop to come out, and I put my hand on him and I told him, I'm really glad that this community has a pastor like you. I'm glad that he's a preacher. I'm glad this community, or any community, has somebody like him who cares about these people's spiritual well-being. Now, for those of you who are not House of Prayer members, let me set the stage. Oh, buddy, is it awesome. So the bishop, A.D. Cunningham, the 5th Sweet Daddy, he has been in office for a little over a year or two now, and he is often on tour, going to different houses of prayer, because again, there's over 100 of them. And when Sweet Daddy comes to town, it is a celebration. So this event that he was here for is what's called Convocation. Now, I've heard different things from different members, but it is a sacred and solemn assembly. It's basically one of their holy holidays. Holiday also just means holy day, but whatever. It's a time for consecration and prayer, and I've even heard one member say that it's a time where heaven is just a little bit closer to earth. You can expect miracles during these times. Your prayers are more likely to be answered during this season. It's a big hubbubaloo. And in addition to that, Sweet Daddy, the bishop, makes his way through different houses of prayer. Now, if you're Catholic, imagine like the Pope was coming to your local diocese. That would be a big deal. You know, people would come out of the woodwork to see that thing. Likewise here, this small church was bursting at the seams with people. There was standing room only to see the bishop in the flesh. So again, I was sitting in my visitor's booth, and for probably about an hour, everyone was just hyping themselves up for the moment the bishop came in. Now, if you'll recall, the United House of Prayer for All People has a banging brass section. It is what they're famous for. And it's got like this, you know, kind of New Orleans jazz vibe to it, but at the same time, it's totally its own unique thing. And different preachers from all across the country who are in this caravan along with Sweet Daddy, they get up to the mic and they kind of hype the audience up about, you know, how the man of God is going to be coming out any minute. Prep your hearts, prep your minds, because, you know, Sweet Daddy is going to be here any moment now. And so the music is bumping, people get up to the mic and they start sharing testimonies about miracles that have happened. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm clapping along, and I'm having a good time. These people are so stupid talented. They sound amazing. Full disclaimer, I have sensitive ears. I don't like loud noises. So I stuffed my ears full of toilet paper, but mark my words, it sounded amazing all the same. So then after about an hour of kind of, you know, prep and soul work, I hear something from the stage like, "Here comes the man of God!" And everyone kind of rubbernecks behind them, and they see a man walking from the back with an entourage of presumably armed security guards. Everyone immediately clears the aisles, and in unison, everyone reaches into their wallet and pulls out a crisp dollar bill. 5s, 10s, 50s, probably not hundreds, but, and I bet there was even like protocol on how to hold the dollar bills, right? You hold it vertically so that it's easier to grab. And it was the most bewildering sight I've ever seen. Everyone's smiling and singing and crying and speaking in tongues, and the bishop walks through the aisles. He has this kind of graceful cadence. He just kind of has this swagger about him, and he walks up to one group of people and he plucks the dollar bills from their hands and holds their hand gently. The brass section is still blaring in the back. The choir is lifting their voices, and he just takes and takes and takes and takes and takes. And I'm sitting in about the 5th row. And so he's slowly moseying up my direction. And I'm not sure what to do in this moment, because this is a religious leader that I probably disagree with very heavily. And it's like, is this kind of a, you know, I don't want to be complicit in this whole ordeal? Am I, you know, pledging my allegiance to you if I give you a couple bucks? Or is it just kind of a, you know, when in Rome, do as the Romans do kind of thing? I thought about it for a few minutes, and then I reached into my wallet and pulled out a $2 bill. I don't know why that seemed significant, but it did. And so he walks by me, and I think maybe he was a little bit surprised that I was giving him $1, but he saw me, locked eyes with me, and I know that he knows who I am. He's seen my videos. He took the $2 bill out of my hand, and he held my hand just for a moment, just briefly. And he gave me a nice, big, warm smile. And I didn't know how to feel about it. I still don't know how to feel about it. If I can be candid with y'all, it was a weird experience. I'm trying to talk out of both sides of my mouth, and I'm trying to, you know, do the YouTube thing and intrigue people about how interesting it was. And then I'm trying to be polite to the members of the United House of Prayer for All People. And I'm trying to not scare them away with criticisms. But I hope that you can hear that in my heart of hearts, any criticisms that I have or any skepticism that I have is for the protection and the safety of you all. Before I came to this house of prayer, I listened to a recent sermon by Sweet Daddy. And the sermon was titled, "Haters Are Gonna Hate."
Don't let the haters steal your joy. The haters, they were here before we got here. They're here while we're here. And they're going to be here after we're gone. But one thing about hatred, unless you allow it to, it does not have any impact on you.
And I don't hate you. I don't hate these people. If anything, I'm sitting there and listening to it, and I'm obviously the oddball out there, and I'm looking around this room, this sea of people, and I'm kind of falling in love with them. There is so much to love about this place. These musicians are talented. They are skilled. The security guards there, who were keeping me safe and preventing, any kind of altercation from breaking out, that is a largely thankless task, and they are sincerely appreciated. The women who got up and, shared their testimony, seeing the way in which that they were filled with faith and filled with hope, it was beautiful, and it meant a lot to me. And seeing the reverence and the conviction of all of these people was astounding. I don't hate the bishop. I don't hate these people in the slightest. All I want is to know that you're well. If I can zoom out a little bit, I feel like I need to show you guys how this looks from the outside. Recently, in Durham, a man named David E. Taylor was arrested. Now, this guy has been on my radar for years and years and years. And on the surface, there are a lot of parallels with the United House of Prayer for All People. You're talking about a successful, charismatic leader who claims to have an incredibly unique connection to God. You're talking about full gospel services where people are breaking out in tongues and claiming miracles. And he's recruiting his followers to do a lot of paid, but more often than not, unpaid labor. And woven all throughout this ministry was loads and loads and loads of money.
David Taylor, a man was arrested here in Durham, and Michelle Brannon in Tampa, Florida. Federal indictments accuse the two of receiving roughly $50 million in donations to their religious organization since 2014, largely through forced labor practices in call centers across the country.
Now, from an outsider's vantage point, from somebody who is entirely removed from all of this, on paper, these two groups, David E. Taylor's group and A.D. Cunningham's group, look very similar, strikingly so. And when the FBI began digging in David E. Taylor's proverbial backyard, they found mistresses, they found money laundering, they found human trafficking, and what looked, questionable on the surface, underneath was just this festering rot.
Prosecutors say Taylor required some followers called armor bearers to serve him around the clock. They were allegedly tasked with transporting women to him, some of whom were told to take emergency contraceptives.
She basically said that they starved her, they mentally and psychologically abused her, they used scripture and hell to condemn her. It was almost like a loyalty program.
And it sucks so bad because I've spent the last week going through and listening to some of his sermons. Oh, and he was a good preacher. I felt myself wince because a lot of the speaking points that I used to make when I was an earnest and sincere Christian, this man was also making, except he was co-opting them so that he could make a lot of money and sleep with a lot of women. And so I haven't done the deep dive on this. I don't have the resources or the means to do the deep dive on this. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes of this group. So in lieu of, doing some hard-hitting investigative journalism, all I can do is ask you, do you feel comfortable here? Do you feel safe here? Do you feel taken care of? Now, I'm categorically not comparing David E. Taylor to the UHOP. It is absolutely possible that things in this group are categorically different and squeaky clean underneath the hood. Now listen, if, at the heart of this thing is just people honoring a man that they believe is uniquely used by God, then I hope and pray that I will, buzz off and have nothing but good things to say about this whole ordeal. But just from the optics, I need to ask, my conscience will not let me not ask these questions. Why is money such a huge part of this service? All throughout the service, not just when the bishop came in, but all throughout the service, there are people reaching into their wallets to pull out what I believe is a love offering, and the maids come down, they pluck the dollar bill out of the people's hands, and they rush it up to the front of the altar. This is categorically not what the Bible says to do, which says, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Seeing the inordinate luxury that the bishop has rolled around in makes me deeply uncomfortable, and it does not at all feel like the humility of Jesus walking in on livestock. And why does all of this money go to sweet daddy rather than to the poor, rather than to members of your congregation? Jesus said, I did not come to be served, but to serve. He washed the feet of his disciples. Has sweet daddy ever done anything like that for you? As I was looking out over this sea of people, I looked around the room, and the phrase that just kind of hit me was kind eyes. I looked at the soloists, and I looked at the tuba players, and I looked at the young maids, and I looked at the steppers, and they all seemed like they had kind, gracious eyes. And so, listening to that sermon by the bishop, I don't hate him or these people, but it concerns me that he thinks that I do. The Jehovah's Witnesses make it a point to always talk about the people that hate them. And this is a tactic of theirs. They double down on the fact that they are persecuted in Russia and Eritrea. They show their congregation videos of, Jehovah's Witnesses being arrested by the police. They constantly bring up how the Jehovah's Witnesses were one of the oppressed minorities in the Holocaust. And the reason why they do that is to make you dismiss the criticisms of the outsiders. And so I am an outsider, but I'm an outsider who so deeply appreciates and admires the bulk of this community. I admire the bulk of what is going on here. Listen, man, even as a non-religious person, even as an atheist, even as somebody who doesn't have a dog in this fight, I take really seriously, as kind of an armchair anthropologist, the fact that there is an incredibly unique and beautiful sliver of culture here that I want to protect at all costs, if at all possible, because I think it's precious what's happening here. Mostly this unique style of dance and stepping, these skits, these songs, these incredible brass sections, all of it is so cool. And I'll be damned if I just come in and try to, screw up the ecology of this tight-knit community. The only reason why I'm willing to risk the integrity of a community like that, the only thing that is more important to me than safeguarding the cultural identity of a community, is protecting the people themselves. And so I don't say any of this lightly. I would so much rather just say, oh, that's interesting, and walk away. But I can't, because I need to make sure that you're well. So do you feel safe being in this community? Do you feel seen and heard and provided for and loved? If you're struggling, if you're hurting financially, do you trust your leaders enough to go to them and ask for financial help? If you've been assaulted or victimized, maybe even by one of the leaders, it happens in every congregation, it happens in every community, but if it happened here, do you feel safe going to an elder or going to an apostle? If you're tempted, maybe you're tempted to sleep with your girlfriend, or maybe you're tempted with same-sex attraction, do you feel safe confiding in your elders and in your spiritual leaders here? As I continue to visit this community and as I continue to seek to understand them better, I realize that the stakes here are high, because David E. Taylor was sitting on top of millions of dollars, and I'm convinced that that is small potatoes compared to the wealth that the United House of Prayer is dealing with. What David E. Taylor had was cute, but this is an empire. And so in closing, I'll say this. There is so much to love in this community. There is so much to appreciate and commend here. And at the heart of it all, I see only one problem, one concern with this entire thing. The talent of these musicians, of these soloists, of these steppers is to be commended. The dedication of the cleaning staff And the security and the ushers and the preachers, that's to be commended too. The humility and the generosity of all of these parishioners who are willing and eager to lay down what they have for the greater good. I think all of that is to be commended. I think all of that is praiseworthy. I think all of it is beautiful and lovely and good. The main thing that I am concerned with is that all of this devotion is given unto a person, a single person. This service is devoted to him. This money is devoted largely to him. These songs are sung to him. And all of this devotion is placed at his feet. And if he is not a good steward of these people's devotion and their minds and their hearts, I will never forgive him. And I sincerely hope that that is, a misplaced concern. I am so grateful that I got to experience this. I'm so grateful that I got to see this whole thing in the flesh. To those of you who welcomed me and made me feel right at home, I endlessly appreciate you. And to the bands and the security staff, thank you for making the evening wonderful. And to the bishop, I hope you hold on to that $2 bill.